And I'm here to talk with Erin Benjamin. I'm just going to give a little intro to her. And she is president and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association since its creation in 2014. Erin has worked in the music industry for over 25 years, first as a touring and recording artist, and then as executive director of both Folk Music Ontario in 2001 and the Canadian Arts Presenting Association in 2008. She currently serves the Ontario Ministry of Heritage, Tourism and Cultural Industries Pandemic Response, Ontario Music Panel as co-chair, and on Ontario Creates National Arts Centre and Algonquin College Advisory Committees. Erin sits as a board member for the Ottawa Film Office, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and the Unison Fund, Canada's leading music industry charity. Under her leadership, the CLMA launched the hashtag For the Love of Live awareness campaign to amplify the impact of COVID-19 on the live music industry for government. The campaign has had a reach of over 43 million and growing, and has helped to leverage over $300 million plus in emergency relief for the broader live music sector. Since March 2020, she has produced a weekly live stream show out of her living room, which has raised over $125,000 for local charities. You are a very busy woman, Erin, and quite amazing, and in this amazing leadership role. Erin, thanks for joining us. And this past year has been hard on not only musicians and touring artists, but the live music industry has been decimated due to the shutdown of venues and many festivals across Canada. What does the next year look like in terms of reopening?
Okay, so this is a good place to start as any. Let me just say thanks for having me. I want to update one thing from that bio and intro that you read, Alka, and that is that our campaign for the love of live has now had a reach of over 55 million. Wow. And that's for a bunch of reasons. And I it's been incredible to see the how that's being used and how it's had an impact. So and hi to folks. I feel like I know lots of you in our small little family here today. So thanks for joining. Some of you will know a bunch of what I'm going to say, especially our friends at Mariposa, who are very close to the work that we do, and some others. And Alka and I think we'll have time at the end for Q&A or other information.
Absolutely.
So happy to take questions, especially since we're a pretty small, intimate group. So what does the next year look like? Here's my pure speculation, crystal ball magic 8 thing for you. I could be easily wrong on everything. I think that, and I'll start from today. So I'm going to talk about Ontario, since this is Folk Music Ontario call, but I'd be happy to sort of speculate other regions if we have folks from obviously Kim's out east and some others. So. But Ontario has by far been the most conservative where restrictions are concerned. And so they have set, like, they're over on one end of the scale. And so for that reason, they're a really good kind of, I guess, example to use in terms of how bad it's been.
Yeah.
Because other regions have been less bad. They've all been bad, but some have been less bad. So in Ontario right now, we're in step 2. We're heading into the second week of step 2 here. It's meant to last until July 21st, in which case we go into step 3, where we know absolutely nothing about, and I do mean nothing, about capacity indoors and out. There's a lot of speculation flying. So here, my prediction is that we're going to stay in step 2 for the duration. We've got this new Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, who we were all cautiously optimistic would be slightly less draconian than his predecessor, Dr. Williams. And I should preface all of this by saying, I've lost the ability to really hone my filters at this point, 16 months into this nightmare, and all of the work that we have done. And I have personally changed my tone a little bit, very deferential and respectful, and still professional and respectful now, but I'm losing patience. For reasons that I'd be happy to unpack, because it has been very, very frustrating, especially in Ontario. No communication, no information, guessing game, making shit up. And it's been really hard. So here we are, step 2. It does sound like Dr. Moore will keep us in step 2 for the duration, but I predict step 3 may be, thanks, Kim, maybe a little short. The big question mark is what happens after step 3. We've been advocating very clearly to government. We expect and believe that that should be zero restrictions, 100% indoors and outdoors with safety protocol in place. No one is saying it, and let me be very clear. The Canadian Live Music Association would not suggest that we just go back to the way things were. We are suggesting, however, that in order for our business to survive, forget about thrive at this point, but simply survive, we really do need to make sure the math makes sense. And that is 100% capacity, a business model that we are built on. A little bit different for festivals, fully recognized. And of course, our festival friends have, I don't know if luxury is the right way to put it at this point, but have the option to, typically you have a larger outdoor space where they can accommodate different types of layouts in terms of seating and placing people, that much more so than our indoor spaces have, obviously. So let's just say, all things being equal, that by the end of the summer, we are through what we're calling step 3 and we're facing some sort of reopening. If we're back up to something really reasonable indoors, I think you'll see a lot of live music activity. I think you'll see a continued push on vaccination rates. And I think you'll see a move to some sort of vaccine passport scenario where people will be required to show something to either gain access, like unfettered access, or be placed in a certain area inside a venue. This is much more important indoors, obviously. But if you'd asked me that question, hey, Erin, do you think we're going to have to show proof of vaccination for live music a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, no, there's no appetite. Well, that's really starting to change. And my comments are based on things that I'm hearing from the community here in Canada and around the world. So the other really, really important thing, and some of you may have seen this, just launched a couple of hours ago, a reboot on the Hardest Hit Coalition's campaign to ignite a very important conversation around the extension of the CEWS and CERS programs, wage subsidy and rent relief, and I'll focus on those two because they're the biggest ones, the most popular. There's some other nuance in there too, but those extending federal relief measures would be critical for our sector, especially if capacity is limited indoors and whatever comes after step 3. Those programs are currently scheduled to completely sunset by the end of September. And our prediction is not just for live music, but for all of tourism, travel, hospitality, and live events, that without them, we will fail spectacularly, even after what will be well over a year and a half of cobbling together various relief programs to stay operational. And this is important to the Hardest Hit campaign that we launched today. Really important to engage with. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please flip screens, go over to hardesthit.ca. Sorry, maybe it's hardesthitcoalition.ca, and engage in this call to action, because it's absolutely essential. Because it will allow our live music businesses and organizations to continue to pay staff to execute the work. So here we are, let's say we're in the fall now, and maybe we're lucky, we've got these federal relief measures extended. We're able to open at hopefully most capacity, if not all. Lots of live music activity. Now we have 2 other problems that we need to be tackling at the same time. One of them is an absence of insurance, right? So if you've got insurance, if you've got insurance, that's awesome. If you've got insurance, chances are you paid a lot more than you did last time. And if you didn't, you're one of the lucky ones. And I'd like to know who your broker is. Please drop me a note. But if you don't have insurance, you may be precluded from even opening at all when we get to something meaningful, even in step 3 in the province of Ontario. And this is a huge, huge problem. It is not just live music, and it is not just in Canada. This is a global problem. We saw the federal government come up with a $150 million backstop program for our friends in film and television. It's not exactly apples to apples, but they did, there's a real understanding of what happens when film and television production shut down because they can't be operational as a result of no liability or business interruption, et cetera. So this is an ongoing challenge. So let's just say that we do have insurance. That should be it. Hey, Devin. Nice to see your name.
Right.
That should be it. It's pretty obvious if you click that website. If it's something else, then keep looking. It's purple and white for the most part. So insurance is. Oh, okay. Well, maybe Joel could find the hardesthit.ca website for me while I'm chatting here, and if not, I can certainly dig it up. So insurance is really key, and we've been speaking to the provincial government. It is not a regulated industry in our space whatsoever. There have been calls for it to become regulated, and if anyone wants, we can certainly unpack the last 16 months of the insurance juggernaut that has really shone a very important spotlight on the relationship between insurance and the live music industry, and to the mythology, the overinflated perception of risk, where alcohol is in that conversation, etc. Very, very, very frustrating, difficult challenge. So, okay, we're in the fall. We're reopen. We're dealing with insurance. Got this other thing, and this other thing is debt load. So we just did the survey and we released a report. You can find it on our website, which is absolutely canadianlivemusic.ca. And yes, and I thank you. Hub has been great, and that's Scott May. I can tell you, Scott, because I know Scott has been pretty.
Yeah, and I thought it was him too, but go on.
Yeah, and Ben Rosington from Hub as well, and it actually all comes back to Ben, because Ben is the lead on in the entertainment space. But so the debt, the accumulation of debt is going to be a significant problem. And 2 weeks ago, I was able to make a presentation to Mayor John Tory, Assistant Finance Minister Mona Fortier, MP Adam Vaughan, and representatives from Minister McLeod's office, really putting this piece front and center. The HASCAP program, some of you may have tried to apply. If you were successful, that's great, but it's very great. A lot of folks tried to apply and were unsuccessful. Frustrating, because the whole point was to be able to address liquidity and fix the ongoing fixed costs. But if you weren't, for whatever reason, if you're not availing yourself of HASCAP, maybe you've dipped into your own savings, you've had to sell your house. There are many stories, we've all heard them at this point. And so you've done everything you can to save your business. And so if we reopen, so much of that, desperately needed earned revenue is going to service your debt. And that is not going to allow our sector to grow as we're going to need it to grow. So I guess I'm saying a couple of things. We are taking challenges into reopening with us that are significant. That means that the advocacy and lobbying from organizations like mine and FMO doesn't stop for 1 second. And that we need to continue to work with, especially people like Minister Lisa McLeod in the tourism space, to really amplify our concerns to ensure that there are programs in place to help us offset some of these costs, because it won't be business as usual, even if we're all selling out every show. And if we're all selling out every show, how long is that sustainable? How many shows are on the calendar already for the fall? Very, very, very crowded live music space. That everyone was predicting that at the outset. We're all going to go on sale at the same time. And I think that's okay. I think that there's a lot of room for consumption at this point. And a lot of fans, as we're seeing in other examples around the world, 350,000 people at a July 4th celebration in Tennessee, example. And certainly with the UK reopening plan, and I can come back to that really interesting article today about what live music will look like, 0 restrictions in the UK coming up on the 19th. Hopefully, although I did hear that they may push that. They announced it, and then I heard.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
But all of these things being equal, I think that the next 12 months will be us finally reopening, addressing these challenges, and trying to find some sort of really a better balance from a business perspective in the winter or spring 2022. And that's hard to hear. I mean, our timeline has been ever extended, and I've called it an invisible finish line many times. Because we just, until the Ontario government comes out with numbers that we know about capacity, it remains invisible, which is why we need the federal emergency relief measures extended, and also why we need that $50 million to flow that was announced in the federal budget for live music. I would imagine that many of you on this call are what we would call phase 1 applicants, so receiving money through your CAP-F relationship, which is great and really lucky, because those of you who access phase 1 will already be seeing top-ups based on the minister's announcement from just a week and a half ago, and getting that money into your bank accounts really quickly to help you not only remain operational, but get some programming going. there is a divide between the not-for-profit and for-profit world, and we're not the only sector dealing with that. Obviously, it's certainly why one reason why the Canadian Live Music Association was established 7 years ago was to try and bring those two sides of the business coin together to complete the sort of the calendar, the touring sort of flow in this country, and address some of the realities for-profit businesses, especially and primarily independent ones, who simply were not able to access existing programs, and then enter COVID, and of course, it's cracked the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So that was a really long answer, Alka, but I mean, I see us getting back. I see us
That's
getting back
okay.
to problems, and I see us
Yeah.
righting the ship should vaccinations truly be successful, and all things being equal, that we can actually put the virus behind us for the most part, being in a much better position in just less than a year from now.
Yeah. And you've touched upon a few things in that answer that I kind of wanted to circle back on. One of them being, you mentioned a vaccine passport, and there's been a lot of talk about rapid testing. How would you say that sort of comes into play with venues and festivals? Is it affordable, first of all?
Well, a great
do
question. And, you know, the testing, it's funny, the testing, I don't know about you guys on the call, but like the testing conversation is flip-flops. It flip-flops. Sometimes government has said, and the chambers in Ontario, the chambers of commerce, and as mentioned, I sit on our on executive of our Ottawa Board of Trade here, so I'm a little more familiar with this program than maybe I would be if I didn't do that. But the chambers were administering the Ontario program, like and Scott, I know Scott May was a recipient, I believe, of some tests, or certainly in the process of getting some. Sorry, Scott, if I don't know the details there, but to be able to leverage the existence of the rapid tests and deploy that process to reinforce. All right. Ideally, the point was to get people tested and reinforce that opportunity. For staff only. Okay, so not for customers or consumers. Interesting. But watching what's happening, and I think we may have lost Alka again. I'm not sure. But looking at what's happening in the UK, I mean, I'm just finding that rapid testing it's expensive, it's cumbersome, and in Ontario, all of the programs that they've attempted to put together have been very slow and ineffective. I'm hearing from all kinds of sectors that there's, they were promised rapid tests and they're just not coming. Despite that, we have continued to surface the notion of rapid testing as a tool in our kit, should it make governments more comfortable. Yeah, so the vaccine, I think Alka was going to so the rapid testing, vaccine passport, I mean, there's going to be a lot of labor law, and probably lots of you are engaging in this already for your workplaces. What can you ask? How do you handle it? It does sound like what's emerging is that for those folks who are not for any reason not comfortable or won't acknowledge or share their vaccination status, then the requirement will be that all measures apply to them. So if you're in an office and you're not sharing that you're double vaccinated, then you'll be required to socially distant, wear a mask at all times, etc., and probably have no friends and sit in a corner. Let's be honest. The stigma attached to this, there's so many things we don't know yet about what this is going to look like. And then for those who are, hi, honey, vaccinated, I've heard one venue owner outside of Toronto who owns a couple of venues and very popular ones, say that that he will personally stand at the door and require proof of double vaccination, or you're not getting in. So we're going to have a bit of a Wild West until we sort it out. And really, the lead needs to come from the federal government on the vaccine passport. They've already said they're not going to do it. But one of the question marks I have, and I'd be interested to hear from other people on this, is that in the reports of, especially out of the UK, which is what I think is so fascinating, rising cases, Delta variant, the media is simply not talking about who is getting sick. Who is getting sick are unvaccinated people. And those are becoming fewer. Unvaccinated people are becoming the minority, and certainly in sort of the Western world. And we know there is a lot of work to do in other countries, and that goes without saying. but so that I think that scales are tipping now in this, and I would put rapid testing and vaccine passports in the same bucket here in terms of, we need to be focusing on reopening as a result of the successful vaccination program, and not catering to the unvaccinated, or certainly not to the anti-vaxxers. Can I just say this one more time? I fully respect your right to choose. I'm not judging you, but I do feel at this point that it's starting to feel like we are making decisions for the folks who are choosing not to vaccinate, as opposed to the millions and millions and millions of people who have, just in order to get their lives back and get their businesses back up and running. So it will be really interesting to see how this plays out, and our role as the live music industry in helping to lead this conversation, watching larger venues, and what their plans are. I'm thinking about, Scotiabank Arena here in Ottawa, TD Place, et cetera, seeing what their plans and procedures will be in the absence of a policy framework, which I don't believe is certainly not forthcoming at this time from the province of Ontario or any other province, as far as I'm aware, but I may be a little behind the times on that. So if you're from outside of Ontario, and your province has got a sort of a proof of vaccine or vaccine status program, I'd be really interested in hearing more about that.
And the other thing you also mentioned was around insurance. And so what's going on there? Like, I know a lot of insurance companies have said that they won't cover certain things for venues and festivals. And
Sure.
Right. So how can we, I guess we as the general public, help in that sense, or what can venues and festivals do?
Well, first of all, you can use the hashtag and tweet at or tag all of your local officials. You write letters, and you can say, I work in the live music industry, and this is punitive and unfair, and point them in our direction, because we've done a lot of writing. It's all on our website, recommendations, et cetera, meetings with finance ministers and so on about what can be done. I mean, I think we're possibly inches away at this point from meeting with the finance minister and the premier's office again in Ontario. We did call for this in one of our recommendations in the Mayor Tory Summit, the Hospitality and Entertainment Summit that happened with the Associate Finance Minister and Adam Vaughan, et cetera, that I mentioned a few minutes ago. One of our recommendations was to ask the province to convene the industry, the insurance industry, and the live music sector, and any other sector for that matter that's having the same challenges as I mentioned. There are many others, but to really resolve this. And the one thing we know the insurance industry doesn't like is bad publicity, and they've got a lot of it. When it started to really rise to the surface many months ago now, I very quickly heard from the IBC, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and the what's it called in Ontario, the Brokers Association, and had many meetings about what to do. The IBC came up with a shitty program that didn't work for anyone, called I'm going to forget. Basically, yeah, Scott, I know, but they came up with a bottom of the barrel program. If you really crap out everywhere, we've got a product we'll sell you for $1 bazillion. But even that didn't work. Even that couldn't get written for some venues. And we have a couple of venues who did explore that with the IBC, and it didn't work. I've been working with the City of Toronto, and Mike Tanner, who some of you may know, the Music Development Officer for the City of Toronto, and a fabulous human being who's been working so hard, like many of you, over the last year and a half to try and fix things on behalf of desperate people. We were well down the road of developing a best-in-class insurance program. And those of you who are close to the CLMA's list, you will have heard me talk about this, or reference it, or say something's coming. Well, it turns out that at the very 11th hour, the broker we were working with bailed because there was another broker in the space who was also helping. It's a really stupid. I mean, this is kind of, and I'm sorry, I've learned more about insurance than I ever wanted to know. And I've been more frustrated by this conversation than possibly any other, because it's just so clear to me that no one's with the exception of Ben Rosington at Hub Insurance and maybe one or two other brokers and companies, no one is really interested in helping us to solve this problem. And I think it'll solve itself. It'll just work itself out, which it may. At what cost? And I have to say that the stress, the mental health aspect of this for many in our
It's
sector
high. Yeah.
has been grueling. I mean,
Yeah.
because, you know, not to mention some of them have been continuing to pay premiums like
Yeah.
while closed. So what I can tell you today is that so the city of Toronto continues to help try to facilitate. The province may get involved. Ben Rosington is a champ, and the person that Scott mentioned, again, there are brokers out there, and some of you on the call probably have great relationships, and I really hope you do, because it's really down to the broker who can convince the underwriter. Yeah, I mean, and the next couple of weeks will be critical. I've heard venues say they're prepared to open without insurance.
Mhm.
I've heard venues say that they'll come up with a creative solution with their landlord who owns bricks and mortar. Because the irony is that it could be insurance that keeps these businesses closed, and that we simply can't have that. I mean, it's shocking to me after all this, all the money. And here, sorry, and the last thing I'll say is why do we think this is such a problem? Well, a couple of reasons. The live music industry, and again, I'm sorry, I kind of tend to conflate like festivals, indoors and outdoors. And I do know that I fully understand it's slightly different for festivals sometimes, but it was never perfect in the first place. Insurance rates were already going up. If you talk to Lloyd's of London, the primary underwriter for these types of policies in the country, they'll tell you it's something called a hard market now, and hard markets are cyclical. And whenever it's a hard market, they get out of what they perceive to be the high risk stuff. Live music venues have been lumped in with nightclubs that are, may have had more trouble. Now, I'm not painting all nightclubs with the same brush, but the perception is that if you're a nightclub, you're more likely to have a shooting in your parking lot or whatever. Like, I mean, those are rare incidences, but they happen. And when they do, they really have a major impact on other clients in that same space. And live music venues are perceived as being a place where people come to gather to drink. And so the alcohol piece is the reason that it's so challenging. And I've heard some underwriters say to us, happy to write a policy, just, if you suspend your liquor license, you want to be operational without liquor, no problem. Well,
right.
Talk about when the math doesn't work. I mean,
no kidding.
We could have a whole other session on where alcohol fits in the live music industry. And I don't know that either of us are prepared to debate that today, but it's a reality. And especially in recovery, I mean, we're going to need to sell everything we've got. I don't care what it is, food, alcohol, merch, like all of it is going to need to be for sale, and everybody's going to have to buy it if they expect to walk into an amazing venue like Bar Robo or Queen Street Fair in Ottawa again. So that's the reality.
Yeah. And just to talk about venues a little bit more, but like how many venues would you say have shut their doors completely?
So we have a crowdsourced list that we were really, encouraging the community to contribute to I would say in the early days, whatever that means, first 6-8 months of this, because we wanted to get a number to government to help really make the point. So we backed off the careful care and feeding of that list a little bit, because frankly, it was just too depressing and exhausting for people to keep tally. For a bunch of reasons, but I can tell you that, so what I'm saying is the list may not be as accurate as it once was, but that list it continues to identify 85 primary live music venues that have closed permanently across the country. Wow. And it's got to be more.
I'm sure it is. Wow.
Yeah. But those are primary live music venues. So venues whose primary purpose is for putting on shows. So if we don't count you in that list if you're, for example, at Heart and Crown and you have music on the weekends, and you've closed. I'm sorry to pick on Heart and Crown, but or whatever. But if your primary purpose of operations is to present live concerts and you have closed permanently, then you're on that list.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are there things that patrons can do to assist in having venues that can reopen safely? I guess frequent them. It would be one of them.
Well, sure. And I think that looking at the list of folks on this call, you've all got your strategies and have probably been having conversations with your mailing lists and your networks and your customers and your people. No question. I mean, the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition launched a fundraising
Yeah.
like crowdsourcing fundraising event this week, as you would know, Alka, but
Yeah.
like trying to raise money from people who care about the music industry and artists especially. But I honestly, because I'm speaking to the converted here and I'm speaking to industry more than artists, I would say go after your elected officials and don't stop. Use our hashtag, write letters, take everything that we've got on our website and remind them. And I mean city councilors too, because they can really help amplify. An example would be Councillor Brad Bradford at the City of Toronto, who is now the chair of the Toronto Music Advisory Council, TMAC, basically the voice of the music industry to the municipal government in Toronto, but also has sway with people like Dr. Davila, the Chief Medical Officer of Health in Toronto, who can then in turn influence Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, and hopefully Dr. Moore. So there's elected officials tend to talk to each other, and they can pick up the phone a little more easily than some of us can. So that constant advocacy at even at a grassroots level is critical. And then asking your customers, your patrons, your networks to do the same thing. That's how we managed to see 70 million for live music in the budget, was basically by asking all of you to help us amplify a message. And we need to continue to do that. And we all wish we didn't. And that's I don't know about you guys, but like I walk down the street now and people are like, oh, you must be so optimistic. And sure, I'm optimistic. Of course I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic person or I wouldn't have this job. But especially now. But the reality is that, as you all know, we're months away from anything meaningful in terms of, being able to earn revenue. It's not just about earning revenue, but kind of important if we want to open our doors. And the world doesn't understand that the hardest hit sectors will continue to suffer significantly for many months yet. And that's why I would say that our advocacy is more important today than it has ever been. And that's an exhausting thing to think about. Again, I don't know about you guys, but it certainly exhausts me. And I'm like, oh, another campaign.
Yeah, and a lot of surveys, a lot of campaigns, but I mean,
but it's critical.
What we have to do. Yeah.
Just as much as the government can't not continue to maintain their investment in all the billions of dollars they have put into travel, tourism, hospitality, live events, all of you billions of dollars. And if they pull the plug on federal relief, and let's not kid ourselves, that's 70 million, 50 of which is supposed to go in the live music sector to some of you this year. That's going to be a drop in the bucket. It's the emergency relief programs like the wage subsidy and rent relief that are so meaningful. If they pull the plug now, they will lose those billions of dollars. It would just be, you're in for a penny and for a pound, and nobody likes the timeline here. So especially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to go now to the audience for any questions, but any thoughts about, like, any last thoughts before mine and your conversation is done, and we'll open it up to questions, like any last thoughts about venues and festivals?
Well, I have lots of thoughts. I mean, I think that I think so many amazing things have happened in the last 16 months. And let me actually linger here for a second and talk about the collaborative nature of advocacy. Advocacy itself has been entrenched in the minds of folks who really never thought they needed to engage or weren't engaged. Associations have led the way. The need for associations, and sorry, obviously, those who know me, I drank the association Kool-Aid a long time ago, obviously, but if we didn't have associations, and I don't care if you're a hotel, a restaurant, or a festival, if you didn't have your association fighting for you, you'd be so much more on your own. It would be that much harder. The live music industry has a loud voice. If any of you were on the Tory Summit 2 weeks ago, and why would you be? But Julie DeBruzen, who is a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage, gave the Canadian Live Music Association a shout out for our advocacy and was direct messaging me throughout that, saying, you guys have no idea what kind of impact you had. And that was like that advocacy, that community force was what I've been working on my whole career to really bring together the live music sector. I just didn't think it was going to take a pandemic, but I'm kind of grateful for that opportunity to really prove to our community that it works. It's important to invest in your associations, even with small amounts of annual membership money. That's been a real silver lining, and we'll be better for it. So when we get out of this mess, we're not starting from scratch from an advocacy perspective. We have a new starting line, and it's a really impressive one. And so that's great.
Right. Yeah. And we do have a few questions here.
Yeah.
So in the short term, we'll have less international artists at festivals, but could this continue? And will festivals have more of focus on regional artists moving forward?
100%, that's going to happen in the next 12 months without question. And those of you who are programming, you already know that, right? With the board, speculation is the border, there's going to be movement soon on the border. I can tell you, I spend more time, I may have said this to some of you before, like working with the airlines than the music industry. In fact, I spend very little time working with anyone outside of live in the music industry these days, but more with with the CEO of Air Canada and WestJet. I mean, we're all trying to push in the same direction, swim up the same stream on the border thing. But it's a great opportunity for Canadian artists, and especially emerging racialized artists. Like with those opportunities, that's why we need to make sure they exist, right? We need to get those artists on stages in front of people, whether it's on screen or in person, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to not miss that development opportunity and moment, because we will have lost so many of those, right? Like that's what a lot of us lose sleep over, is like, what have we done here? So in a lot of ways, it's a bit of a silver lining for Canadian artists. And certainly we'll see Canadian headliners much more than we would. In fact, we probably won't have enough of them. So you'll be seeing the same artists at a lot of shows. That's my prediction. And that won't be a long-term thing, but I do think we'll get international artists moving again by next year.
Which will be great. Yeah, which will be great. And Scott is asking if you could please recap the expected funding streams. He got a small sum as part of phase 1 and has an application in for Reconnect Festival and Event 2021. What can he expect realistically to see?
Okay, so I can't give you a number, but I can tell you that Reconnect, they promised it 2 weeks ago. I spoke to the ADM, who I was sort of hoping give me a less political answer than he did. I've heard that Reconnect announcement's coming this week, but I'm not holding my breath. Could be next week. And let's remember, thinking back, Reconnect used to be Celebrate Ontario, and Lisa McLeod walked into Tabolo's mess on that a couple of years ago, and has been sort of it's just a disaster every year. Every deadline is a disaster. The program staff are exhausted. The ministers try to achieve a bazillion things with this, but they do have their full envelope, Scott, and it's going to be heavily oversubscribed, just like the live events program at Factor was massively oversubscribed.
Well, there's another question about from Chris. Any guesses on outdoor indoor capacities for step 3 in Ontario? So venues like Burrells Creek starting to announce events for July, August, and we're wondering what scale of events we can plan for.
Okay, so here's what we know is a great question. There's tons of speculation, and I can tell you off the record that I know lots of people who already have decided what it's going to be in their play. They're putting shows on sale based on what they believe, which is fine. I mean, you have to do what you have to do at this point, because government's been very little help, unfortunately. I just like to say I really feel for people in government. It's never want to be a politician. Very, very difficult job for sure. So here we are at step 2, and it's 25% capacity. In fact, we've just sent a letter to the Minister Elliott and the Dr. Moore today, asking for more clarity on the OREGs as they are written in step 2. But let's just say, for argument's sake, 25%. Forget about that times 16 square meters, blah 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 formula that seemed to really, really screw things up for people. So I think we'll move to 50% outdoors and somewhere between 15 and 25% indoors. So if it's a straight up 50% outdoors in your festival, that's probably something you can work with. I've had chats here in Ottawa with Blues Fest and others, what does that look like for you? Is it worth it? All the infrastructure you'd require. 15% yeah, Scott, 15 to 25%. We're arguing for 25% indoors. But here's the other thing, like I said earlier, and that is that we're really hoping step 3 will be very short, and then step 4, whatever they're going to call it after, is 100%. So cautiously optimistic that this next step is very, very short. I was told by 2 elected officials in the province of Ontario that step 2 would be shortened. This was before there was a new chief officer of health. So I mean, not everything's on and off the table on a regular basis.
Yeah. I looked on the ontario.ca website and it said 21 days after step 2.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, 3 weeks.
hopefully, yeah.
But the thing I want to add to the speculation around step
Mhm.
3 for, if it was it Chris that asked,
Yeah.
was there's speculation that there'd be no, if any distance required, it would be 1 meter. And
Okay.
even question marks around mask wearing for double vaccinated people.
Interesting.
What I think
Okay.
they're trying to sort out. And looking to the UK
Yeah.
and other countries with who are reopening, obviously the US is, everyone's favorite example because it's such a free for all, and knows God. I know, but look, like, okay, so we have time. We'll come back to that. Like, I think 15% to me is what a non-essential retail. And they went up to 25%. Like, it's so insane, you guys. It's insane.
Mhm.
And please don't take the information I'm sharing as my sort of nodding in agreement that it's a good idea. I think it's whacked at this point. Like, it's just whacked. And it's just so punishing to us. It's never been fair. And for those of you who saw our hashtag Fairness for Arts ON Ontario campaign, we sent almost 40,000 letters to the Premier in that, and still a totally different scenario federally with our advocacy in Ontario. I mean, we're just like this. We showed them line by line. When you go to do a bylaw review, and you have like what it was and what you want it to be, like, we did that in the reg with the sector. We're like, this is so unfair. It's not right. Like, can't you see? And this is going to kill you guys. I met with both Davila and the minister's chief of staff, Mr. Elliott, and I asked them, surely you've been reading everything that we've been sending, and our reports and our recommendations and our requests for clarity and offers to help and wanting to collaborate. Like, I don't know how many, even off my desk alone, we're up to over 100 letters in the province. And like, that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And both, with all due respect to Davila and Elliott's team, they both said, "Oh, no, but we're happy. No, we're not familiar with your challenges, but we're happy to learn."
Wow.
This was 3 weeks ago. So this is the kind of thing, and maybe you're saying to yourself, well, where's your Minister of Culture on this?
Mm-hmm.
And Lisa's been working super hard, but there's no question, it's the worst kept secret at Queen's Park these days that, no one can penetrate the health table.
Yeah. And I was actually going to ask you if you had been able to get any contact with the health minister at all.
Well, these 2 meetings that I'm talking about, we've now had 3.
Okay.
I met with the chief of the pandemic response, the director of pandemic response or something, a really engaged guy, wanted to learn. But they're all, I mean, they're overwhelmed with the we're one voice in millions. And it's just been so disheartening to finally get meetings and realize that their starting line is so far back and you've got to do it all over again. I mean, I see some silver linings in that. I mean, we're creating great relationships with these people finally. And again, my presentation to Tori, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating this a lot because it's fresh for me, but it really distills a lot of where we are right now. And if anyone, it's for sharing, if anyone is interested in our Q's and Sue's report that we sent to Freeland, also available. Just really making the point about collaboration and how punitive and discriminatory the regs have been on live performing arts, completely unfair, and forcing them to look in a mirror on this. And it's not just Erin Benjamin, who's maybe well known for being kind of bossy in meetings or whatever. It's the leadership from Stratford Festival and Shaw and Can Stage and Canadian Opera Company and the Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts. There are many, many incredible arts leaders who have stepped up and we're on the same page. And as I said, we've just sent yet another letter today introducing ourselves to Dr. Moore and saying, here's the problem, here are our recommendations, and here are our goals for the next month, like to get to know you and you get to know us and build that relationship quickly.
Wow. Any other questions from people out there?
Does anyone want to know if this is straight vodka?
I do. Is it water or straight vodka?
It's gin, actually.
I was going, oh, there you go.
It was tequila. I see it in my eyes. Oh my God, you guys. It's just so, it's is anyone still on this call? It's just
Yeah, there
so,
are.
it's so nice to be, I feel it so at home in an FMO, cheers indeed, in an
Yeah.
FMO conversation. And I want to really thank all of you, like Scott and our friends from Mariposa, and those of you really engaged with our work, because they feel so less alone. We're a very small team at the CLMA, as you know, and I've never, you know, the word exhausted, it would just be such an understatement, but I've never felt more determined and passionate and committed and inspired by our members and people like each of you who have just not thrown in the towel. And Scott, I know that you're hopefully joking about the hemlock, but I mean, it's just been such a ride for you, all of
Yeah.
you. And it's been so hard, and it's not in my own personal nature for things to get dragged out, and not like I need results. And we have achieved many incredible successes, but at a great cost. And I know it has been the farthest thing from easy for any of you. So I just, you know, thank you for not giving up and being there with us as we try and ride this thing out and get to that invisible finish line once and for all.
Well, Erin, you've been amazing. You've been an advocate for all of us in like festivals, venues, associations, music industry. So, you know, you and your team have done an outstanding job. So thank you. Like, amazing work, truly. And it's really great to have you here and talk with you, actually. This is great. And I haven't actually physically seen you for a year, you know.
I know.
Crazy.
It is
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Because Alka and I are close friends, and we formerly hung out all the time.
Yeah.
We will again. And
Yes.
And my parting words would be like, now is the time to dig into advocacy. And just when you think you have nothing left in the tank, top it up if you can. Take your vacation, recharge, come back, you know, with your, I don't know, with your fists ready to go, because if they don't hear from us, they're going to think it's okay. And there's an election coming federally. This is so important. You're going to have candidates starting to ramp up in your ridings who will want your vote, and you can leverage all of that. It's a great time to leverage the opposition. It's a great time to build that relationship. The Liberals are going to get a majority. That's my prediction. I'm full of predictions today. So, you know, if you're not already best friends with your Liberal candidate or incumbent, then now is the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, Scott, I hear you, but we're going to get there. We're getting there. We are. And it's easy for me to say that I don't run my own small business. So I fully understand where your heart's at. And I feel you. I think of you every day, my friend. And those like you.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Erin before we wrap it all up? Just really want to thank you all for joining us. This has been tremendous. And thank you again, Erin, for all your wisdom. It's been amazing.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Alka.
Thank you.